finds a link. Well,
Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I am here today at the Rock Island Auction House. I'm checking out some of the guns that they're going to be selling in their upcoming June of 2016 regional auction. And among many others, they have this veritable assault rifle of the 1800s. This is a really cool carbine, and we definitely need to take a look at it. As a side note, I did do a short video on one of these several years ago. I figured it's about time that we do a more in-depth and higher quality video on them. So here we go. This rifle was developed by a guy named Warren Evans. He lived up in Maine, and his initial design for this gun was in 1873. Interestingly, this is
Stream Elements.
moved to Maine fairly recently.
Welcome to my channel.
This was the only firearm mass-produced in the state
Welcome
of Maine.
to my channel.
Interesting little bit of trivia there. At any rate, what Evans came up with was a very interesting magazine system that he paired up with a gun design. Now, the whole rear end of this gun, the buttstock and everything, is built around a tube about 1.5 inches in diameter that contains a long helical magazine. Now, the original old model guns using this magazine, would hold no less than 34 cartridges. And this wasn't a little pipsqueak of a cartridge either. These guns were developed around a proprietary cartridge that Evans also designed, the 44 Evans Short. And in the original configuration, this was about a 1-inch long cartridge case, about 25 millimeters. It fired a 220 grain bullet at about 850 feet per second. So that's almost identical to 45 ACP today. Now, Evans went ahead and built these guns, and he made them in a variety of configurations. You could get all sorts of different barrel lengths, different finishes were available, and they were made in both military and civilian patterns. So you might have a wood stock going all the way to the muzzle, you might have a bayonet lug, or you might have something like this with a short barrel and a sporter-style fancy stock. The old model guns he manufactured from 1874 until 1876 and didn't make very many, probably only about 500. This was kind of the introductory period for the Evans rifle. He was able to get some of the guns out there, get some reports back from them, and one of the main complaints was that the cartridge was underpowered. People wanted something with a little bit more oomph to it. So with this feedback in mind, in 1877, he starts producing a new model of Evans carbine, or rifle, depending on which you ordered. This was instead based around the 44 Evans long cartridge. This was about 1.5 inch cartridge, brass case, so about 50% longer. In metric, you'd be looking at 38, 39, 40 millimeters, something in there. And this boosted the performance to firing about a 300 grain bullet at about 1,200 feet per second. So this is getting into much more substantial territory. At that point, you're looking at something roughly equivalent to the Spencer carbine. So you went basically from a Henry equivalent cartridge to a Spencer equivalent cartridge, and that's a reasonable increase in potency. Now, because this cartridge was longer, it reduced the magazine capacity. The new model Evans could only hold 28 rounds. Now, I believe that was 26 in the magazine tube, and then you could actually get 2 more into the action in the chamber, kind of like, adding one to the chamber of a regular lever action rifle. So capacity of 26 to 28 in the new model gun. However, it was a significantly more potent round, and people liked it. In fact, they liked it quite a lot. They were only in production until 1879, so only 3 years of production here, but he still managed to produce between 12 and 15,000 rifles, depending on which sources you read. They were fairly popular in the US. They were also sold in significant numbers in South America. Interestingly, one of the major investors in Evans Rifle Company, the Evans Repeating Rifle Company, was actually the Merwin and Hulbert Company, who were a manufacturer of actually probably the best Old West pattern revolver ever designed. They had taken a lot of their capital and put it into the Evans Company in hopes of making a really nice return. They thought this rifle had a lot of potential. And they did some of the marketing and sales for them. So it was apparently largely through Merwin and Hulbert that a lot of the Evans rifles were sold in South America. They were also examined by a number of continental powers with an eye towards potential military use. Apparently both Russia and Turkey bought quantities of these guns. They were tested by the U.S. military. The U.S. military, at the time, of course, was still working with the single-shot trapdoor Springfield. They put this through a dust test, which it failed. It wasn't reliable enough for them. And there are going to be some issues with the loading and the firepower, which we'll get to in a minute. At any rate, the U.S. military declined these rifles. The problem here really was Evans was competing against Winchester, which had a huge advantage in the marketplace. They were very popular. They were well known. Evans managed to get some impressive tutorials. There were guys like Kit Carson and Buffalo Bill Cody who used these rifles. Now, potentially, they simply used them because they were paid to use them and endorse them. But regardless, the Evans Company got some really nice testimonials as a result. But it just wasn't enough for them to overcome the competition with the Winchester Company, primarily. And this was a small company. It was basically an inability to efficiently organize a manufacturing plant and set up for large-scale manufacturing that did them in. By 1879, the company was going bankrupt. Interestingly, they actually pulled down the Merwin and Hulbert Company at the same time. The loss of the Evans Company put such a hurt on Merwin's finances that they were ultimately driven out of business at the same time. By 1881, all of the Evans Company tooling and production stock had been auctioned off, and it was gone. Warren Evans himself went back to his career in dentistry and continued to invent things. He patented some other designs for dental application technology and ultimately lived until 1912, apparently. So he had an impressive run at it. And you know, 12,000 to 15,000 rifles, that's pretty substantial. It may be ultimately a failure in the marketplace, but that's an impressive try. There are a lot of guys who are designing guns out there who didn't get anywhere near the success that Warren Evans did. So why don't we go ahead and take a closer look at this, because there's some really interesting details to how you have to feed and operate this gun, because it does have this very unique magazine system. So here's the issue with the helical magazine. What you have is a hollow cylinder here, goes all the way down to the butt plate, and it has a spiral track running in it, and that track controls the front and the back of the cartridge. So that spiral track allows cartridges to spiral their way up this tube. Now, in the center of the tube, you have a cross-shaped follower. So you can see it right here. And every time you run the lever, you rotate that follower by 90 degrees, or a quarter of a turn. What this does is it means that each cartridge, you'll have 4 columns of cartridges, one in each corner of this follower, and they're all stuck on this spiral track. So each time that you rotate the follower, you're pushing each cartridge slowly up this magazine tube. Now, one of the nice side effects of this is there's no spring. This isn't a spring-loaded magazine, it's a manually operated magazine. Think of it as like an elevator or a conveyor belt, where each time you operate the lever, you're moving both systems forward by 1 increment. So that means there isn't a magazine spring to go bad. That's kind of cool. The downside is it means that when you load this thing, it's like loading a conveyor belt. You're putting 1 cartridge in each position all the way down this magazine tube. Because you start, in order to load it, you actually start at the butt. Right here, we have a loading gate that you open, and then you slide a cartridge in, just one. Then you have to operate the lever, and that rotates the follower, which pulls that 1 cartridge 1 position up the magazine. Then you put in another cartridge, run the lever again, put in another, and repeat this. On a new model gun like this, you would repeat that process 28 times, 26 times, and you would end up with 1 cartridge right here at the top of the magazine, the whole stack of the magazine full, and 1 ready to shoot. Now, again, the conveyor belt analogy works really well here, because let's say we shoot a round. Chamber it, we fire the round, we open the action, we've now ejected a cartridge. Everything in the magazine tube moves up 1 position, and this means at the very end of the magazine, right back here, we now have 1 empty space in the magazine. Let's say we shoot 3 more rounds. So now we've got 4 empty increments, 4 empty spaces at the back of the magazine. If after 4 rounds we now have a moment, we can do some loading. In order to load the action, we have to put 1 in and then cycle the lever, which means we're going to spit a live round out unless we actually shoot it at the same time. And we've now put 1 round in this last increment of the magazine. We still have 3 empty spaces ahead of it. So if we load it full, and then we fire 4 rounds, and then we load 1, you're going to have, 24 more shots, and then you're going to have 3 empty spaces in the magazine, and then you're going to get to that 1 last cartridge you loaded. So because there is no spring, cartridges don't take up empty space. They can't advance on their own. So if you wanted to fire 1 round out of the magazine, you have to load it in the buttstock, cycle the lever 26 times, and then the 1 cartridge has advanced all the way up. Now that was a real problem. That was certainly something that the Army took issue with, and it's just kind of a pain for everybody. So one of the other improvements with the new model over the old model of Evans is he changed this mechanism so that when I open this, I can open it all the way, like so, without rotating the follower. This is just far enough that it will have extracted the empty case. It won't really eject it because there is no ejector in the Evans. Instead, it's just the bottom corner of this follower that when I open it all the way, right there, that follower turns and it kicks the empty case out. Not very forcefully, but it does work. Well, if I want to single load this, I can, but I don't have an ejector. So I'm going to have to kind of shake out the empty cartridge. And then I can single load a cartridge right here without having moved the magazine follower, because it's only that last little bit of action of the lever that cycles the magazine. So I can open to here, and I haven't moved the magazine until that last bit. That allows me to single load the action, which would definitely be a convenience. So a couple other features here we can take a look at. This is the exposed portion of the hammer, so it does allow you to tell if the gun is cocked or not. And when you fire it, that hammer does drop, like so.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We also have this little thing, lever, button, whatever you want to call it. That is a manual lock for the lever. So to use that, what we do is pull the action, pull the hammer back, just slightly. And there's a notch in the hammer here. In fact, you can see it. Pull it back farther. So you've got this notch. What you do is line it up with that button, push the button in, and that prevents you from opening the lever. So if you were carrying this, say, in a saddlebag scabbard, you could lock the action with that button to ensure that it didn't bounce open when the horse was running, or you didn't accidentally bump it, open the action, cartridges fall out, dirt gets in, anything like that. The markings on an Evan are right here on the top of the barrel. Now on this particular example, they're really heavily worn, and it's really tough to make them out. However, you can just see there, Evans Repeating Rifle Company, Mechanicsburg, Maine, patent and patent number. So that's what you've got for markings. The old model rifles were serialized. The new model rifles, interestingly, were not. So there is no serial number on a new pattern Evans to reference. So the rear sight here reminds me
Welcome to my channel.
of a Lebel rifle.
Hello.
Predated that.
Welcome.
It's a pretty simple, basic stair-step style of sight. You've got 4 increments here. This is 1,
Welcome.
2, 3, and 400 yards. And then you can also
Thanks for
use
luck.
a slider. This one is stuck in place, but it'd be easy enough to free up. You've got increments on this center ladder that go up to 1,100 yards. So you can also move the sight to one of those, lift it up like that if you want to shoot at ridiculously optimistically long ranges with your basically oversized pistol cartridge. A quick note on models. The old model Evans, again, there were only like 500 of those made, do not have any wood on the bottom of the stock. There is a transitional model, which I've kind of overlooked here so far, which has features of both old and new. The transitional guns still use the Evans short cartridge, so they will not have this dust cover on the action. They will, however, have a 2-piece stock like this, and I think something like 1,000 to 1,500 transitional guns. Then you get the much more common version, which is this, the new model, where you will see that it has a dust cover. If you look at the two side by side, you'll of course see that the ejection port on the new model is substantially longer than that of the old and the transitional. That's because it had to be big enough to eject the longer, the new pattern, longer cartridge. So dust cover, the ejection port, those two things show you indicate the new model Evans. If you look at a transitional and a new, you'll also notice that the hammer style is different. The old and the transitional guns have a hammer that actually acts this direction. It lifts out this way, where this one is a linear instead of a rotating hammer. So one last interesting tidbit on the Evans. This comes from some cowboy action shooters who have taken the time to really learn these rifles and hand load for them and shoot them in cowboy action competition. Interestingly, the bore, as far as we can tell, always tends to slug out at .430, so 429, 430, which is typical of kind of what you would expect for a 44 caliber. However, the original ammunition, if you measure the bullet diameter, the original bullets are .419 inch, which is substantially undersized. Now, I didn't see any reference to anybody who had actually pulled one of the original bullets to look at its construction. It may be that those were a hollow-based bullet, and the base really would expand that 11 thousandths of an inch to fill the rifling. It was also supposed that this might have been something anticipated, basically a byproduct of the high capacity of the rifle, that Evans was anticipating that you would be shooting a lot, and thus you would have a lot of black powder fouling in the gun. And this extra deep rifling may have been a way to allow the gun to continue to function effectively with a lot of black powder fouling in the barrel. If you gave it a lot of rifling depth to accumulate in, you would get that many more shots off before it would start to affect your shot pressure. Whether that's actually the intent or not, I really don't know. That's one of those still sort of mysteries out there about the Evans. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I really wanted to do something a little bit more in-depth on Evans, and this was an excellent example to use. So if you'd like to add this to your own collection, you know what? It appears to be a totally functional, pretty nice shooter type of Evans carbine. Check the description text below. Down there you'll find a link to Rock Island's catalog page on this rifle. I believe it is batched with a second rifle as well, so you can take a look at pictures of both of those. And if you decide you'd like to have them yourself, place a bid right through Rock Island's website. Thanks for watching.
I'll get us there. Contract here. This is Tango removed.
Herrera to strike team. I am marking the location of a nearby creature. A genetic sample from it could be priceless.
I'll get us there.
Approaching HVT.
I'll drive. Forward expired. Tossing monkey bomb. One less undead. Buy station right here. I'll get us there. Buy station right